I'm Cheryl Glover. I'm a lifelong native of Johns Island.
Tell me, what's your relationship to Movie Star Hall?
My relationship with Moving Star Hall is, oh my gosh, goes back to my early years, even before I was a teenager. I remembered my mom bringing me here on the nights of service that they would have. A good friend of hers, Tootsie Bligen, was connected to the Moving Star Hall, and her relative Benji Bligen. Those were the people that I remember very distinctly. And coming here, and I mean, this place was, I can't explain it. It was just such a spiritual place. Even as a child, I knew there was something special about it. And I mean, when you got in here, the atmosphere was just like electric. I mean, they were just moving around and swaying, and it would be hot as the dickens in the summer. But nevertheless, you didn't even notice it because it was just so much excitement and praise going on. So that's my connection. And having lived on the island all of my life, I knew, the place existed.
Tell me more about what it felt like and sounded like when you were in here as a kid.
My most vivid memory is of Mr. Benji Bligen. And he had this one song that I remembered from the first time I heard it, even to now. And it goes like this. It's getting late in the evening, and the sun is a going down. It's getting late in the evening, and the sun is going down. Because, of course, he talked in the island dialect, which we call Galagiti, but I mean, that was our language. So even as a young person, I knew what he was saying. So to interpret those is getting late in the evening, and the sun is going down, and basically that. And then Miss Tootsie Bligen, who was a relative of hers, she was probably about all of maybe 4 foot 5, 6, something like that. And she was the shoutingest woman I had ever met in my life. And she was one of the ones that made it so exciting, when we would come into this place. And I mean, it was just electric. I can't even remember any preaching going on because the singing was just so much. It would just take over in the whole atmosphere. And by the time you'd leave, it'd be so late, maybe like 10, maybe even 11 o'clock at night. But I mean, you're just so hyped on the spirit and the excitement of it all. Just, it was just so much. And as a kid, I think that what drew me into actually being connected religiously, knowing that even their history was of struggle and strain and a lot of times of pain. But I mean, when they came into this space, it was just like everything outside didn't exist. It was just all the burdens were lifted, and I mean, there was just nothing else in the world but them and praising their God. And that's all they did. So when you saw them out in the community, it's like, okay, well, I know what her struggle is. I know what his struggle is. But then you come here and you see them and you say, I know how they're surviving. It's something beyond, something much bigger than, us as human beings. And that praise was something that I just loved it. I just loved it. Yeah.
So you were just stomping your feet, you were moving. what, how was the body involved in praise?
Probably the first thing was whatever your favorite tune was. It would also be the rhythm of everything. And that's how it would start. And then you'd hear somebody's foot go like, and then you would hear someone say, yes, all right, go ahead, yes, sir, all right, yeah, Lord. And that, I mean, it would just draw you into it. Before you know it, you were on your feet, and you would just join in however you could, off beat, out of rhythm, whatever have you, but you were in it. That's all I know is that you were just in it, and the movement was just, and most of the times you would see, and it would just, it's automatic, and even if you didn't do that, your feet would go, your foot would. So, I mean, you were just drawn into it. And that's what I said earlier. It's like, that's where I got to know that spirit that came, and it's like you recognize it had to be something else. As a child, I didn't know what the something else was, but I knew it was something. And that's something that I felt I wanted to feel it all the time. Because in my house, with my parents, it was abuse and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a safe haven. So when mom brought me and my younger sister and brother at the time, it was like, hey, I'm safe. I don't have to worry about what happened maybe last week at home. And when we go home, my mom is going to be a little bit stronger, to face and handle what may have happened next day, the next night, or whatever have you going forward. And I can say to this day that strength that she drew on from coming here and being in connection to Miss Bligent and Mr. Bligent and everybody else around her, it helped her. I can see that it helped her. And she passed it on to us, her children, and we've got it as well, all in different degrees. But there's a foundation here that I don't think I would exist without, because the strength that it gave them, it just grew and grew and grew, and it's still growing today. Yeah, so I so much appreciate this. It's been I am 58 years old, and it's probably been close to 40 something years since I've been in this place. So this is, in my mind, I can see it. I can see the benches and I can see the people. I can feel the atmosphere. I can feel the heat. I can feel the excitement. I can feel all of that. Yeah. So it's a blessing to be here again.
What is it about this space, do you think, that made it like such a place of refuge for not only you and your family, but for the community?
The history of Black Americans, I'm going to say, especially those of us on Johns Island, is that we had limited access to so many things. The one thing we had access to was the church. Always had access to the church. And when I was coming up, everything that you probably thought that you need, you could find it in the church. So that was the safe haven for it. The community knew it. People would come to this place, and not only for worship, there was sharing, as I think we call it back, bartering. If Mr. Bligent grew sweet potatoes, someone else, a Jenkins family grew tomatoes, a Fields family grew beans. So everybody would be able to give one to the other without having to worry about the expense of it all. When we talked community back then, community was community. Commune, being together, taking care of each other, looking out for each other. With progress, to me, sometimes progress is a deficit because it takes away so many of the things that especially me, that I grew up with. In light of today's, things that are going on with the young people who are not valuing life, not even valuing their own life, let alone the life of someone else. And so that's what has gotten missing over the years. And it's probably, to me, to the detriment of society, especially life here in Johns Island. But like I said, someone wanted it to progress, and of course we did have to progress in some ways. We grow, things change, people change, but there's also we are all still rooted in the premise of what the church means, is that we have a chance to have a better day tomorrow. If today is your worst day, you have that promise from the church and those connected that tomorrow is not going to look like today. And then tomorrow comes, and tomorrow probably is just as bad, but you still have that hope, that thing that says, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going. Because maybe not tomorrow, but the tomorrow after that, or tomorrow after that, is going to be the breakthrough day. And I'm hoping, I'm praying, and I'm expecting the God that I pray to deliver that better day for me, so that you just hold on to that, just hold on to it, and just keep going and keep going.
So the song you sang for us, why did that stick out, and what did this music teach you?
I don't know why that one sticks out. That's a good question. And I guess it's because if you think about the span of a day, you wake in the morning and you may have plans for yourself, or someone else may have plans for you on a schedule, but it takes you through, and when it gets to the evening part, you vividly see it. You see where the sun is going down. But the actual song meant, as I got older, was that life, in your life, you go through these days, you go through years, but it's going to get late in the evening for you in your life. And what's that going to look like? Am I going to be sick? When I die, is it going to be instantaneous? Is it going to be long suffering? Is it going to be, for a short while and then I just slip away, do I know what I'm going to, die from? And those things is kind of like that song says, if it's getting late in the evening, well, what am I doing with my daytime? I have to make my daytime mean something. I have to be kind to my community. I have to be kind to the people I meet. I have to meet a stranger as if they're not a stranger. So the daytime, what I do in my daytime determines that when my nighttime comes, which in effect was death, and going towards death, means that in the afterlife, in the heavenly realm, where's my spirit going to be? I don't want my spirit to be tormented because that's what the church taught us. There's a heaven or hell. Which one do you want to exist in? So how I lived in my days of my years would determine which one my soul gets to exist in. I don't want to live in a world and be tormented or have to experience tough times and so many tough times and then die and my actual soul goes and experience the same torment. Oh my God, that's to me it was a scary concept as a child, and as I got old I got to understand it. But still, if you consider the fact that if you believe in Jesus Christ and believer in God, then you know that the body will fade away, but the one that lives inside is the soul, and you want that to live on. You want it to be a happy time. In eternity, I want to be happy. I want to be joyous. I don't want to even have to consider that where I'm going. I want my life to matter in the fact that, hey, when my eye closed on this side, that, hey, I'm going to meet a Savior that I have questions for. I'm going to say, Lord, why did this happen to me? I know it had to happen, but also say, thank you that you gave me the tools, you gave me everything I needed. You put people around me, you put experiences in my life, you did everything you could to shore me up to know that my next day is going to be my best day. And the day that I get to meet him, there's a song that I love that says the other shore. It says that when I meet him, oh, it's going to be an awesome, awesome experience. So that's what I have hope in. So the trials and tribulations of life, of course, they are joys. They are wonderful days. I mean, days that I wouldn't change for anything else that are so. I want to hold on to those ones, but I know I can't. You have to move on. But it's those kind of things that particular song in this place, and like I said, it's still to me as a young child that okay, hold on. Yes. I mean, I just felt, you just feel it. You just feel when you experienced it, it's nothing like it. Yeah.
Forgive me, I don't remember the name that you mentioned, but you said that she was a shouting woman.
Tootsie Blygen. Her name is actually Ruth Blygen, but her nickname was known as Tootsie. Yeah.
So, for someone who's never heard of this style of praise and shouting, like, what does that mean to describe a shouting woman, and why do you think that worship developed in that form?
It probably goes back to, like I said, the church was the only safe haven, and the one thing that we could do freely and not have to have any limitations on it, or not have a law restrict what you could do and how you could do it. And so, being uninhibited by that, all of the other things, once you got into that space and that place of praise and shouting, it's like, I'm free. I'm free to do as I want. So in this, even though it's a building of confinement, to me, I didn't see them as thinking it was a building. It was like they were outside jumping. When you ever see little kids that run through a field of flowers or something like that and just twirling around and doing all, that's how it felt to me. And that's how I saw her. And when she would do her shout, she had hips out to here. She was about this tall. But I mean, she was a small woman, but her hips were, very noticeable. And when she would do her shout, she would just sway. And she would just, it's and she would sway, and her feet would move to the sway. Every time she swayed, her feet would move, and she would sing her song, and the others would join in. It was just magical. That's all I can explain. It's magical. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. That's an amazing explanation.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you, and then we're just gonna do some pickups.
Okay.
So, what does Moving Star Hall mean to you? And you mentioned like the change through the years. So if you're talking to younger people, what's something that you want them to know about Moving Star Hall?
Moving Star Hall, first of all, is history. It is a foundation. and it gives you strength. And some people may not describe it as being religious strength or spiritual strength, but it's indescribable. In some ways, it can't be described, but then it can be described. Whatever that inner thing is that you can grab onto, just to say that if I'm sinking or drowning, grab a hold of it and you'll survive. You'll be able to pull yourself up above the waters. And even if the waters get to here, there's a knowing that it's not going to rise above your head. So Moving Star Hall, as I said, was the history of it, the strength, and God bless Pastor K that she has refurbished and still has, the building in existence is being utilized and is changing lives. And not even what happens in here changes lives, but the people who exist in this space and do work in this space go out into the community, go out into different cities, go out into different states, and who knows how far it's going to go. The other history, which is of the Progressive Club, right now, the bus that was utilized by Mr. Esau Jenkins was on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Who would ever thought that an old VW bus would end up there in such a place of prominence? And so this Moving Star Hall sits as a place of prominence on Johns Island amongst folks who was once so poor that they existed with roofs and walls and a dirt floor. And so there is hope. We have a floor here, we have walls, we have lighting, we have heating and air. Back then, there was lamp lights or oil lamps. You put oil in the bottom, and there was a wick that came, and that was light. It wasn't flip the switch, no. Water, you probably have to go outside. There was a pump out in the yard that you'd have to pump water from to get water. There was no such thing as bottled water. You'd be glad if you had a glass to use or a cup to get the glass from. I remember going to a fountain, and this was our cup. Using the hands, letting the water fall in there, and you just drink it from your hands. So this is a foundation. There's a song that says, and I believe it's scriptural also, that says, Jesus is a rock that will never give away, standing on a solid rock. Moving Star Hall is where you can stand on a solid rock. Stand on a solid rock. Never think that you're sinking, because you're standing on something that's built on a firm foundation. Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
There's this one song that I'm familiar with that I love so much because the pace of it is kind of like a pickup. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide us till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus, singing, no, not one, oh, no, not one. Singing, Jesus knows all about our struggles, and He will guide us till the day is done. Oh, there is not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Amen. Amen.
Will you also do a quick pickup of, it was the Day to Night song that you did earlier? You did a little snippet of that
Mr.
one.
Benji's song?
Yes. Just to make sure we get your feet doing that
Okay.
too.
It's getting late in the evening, and the sun is going down. It's getting late in the evening, and the sun is going down. Church is getting late in the evening. the sun is going down, getting late in the evening, and the sun is going down. It getting late in the evening, the sun is going down. It getting late in the evening, and the sun is going down. Hey.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
That was
All right.
incredible.
Amen. Amen.
Alright.
Amen. So I gave it to you in the enunciation. I can do it in the Gullah dialect too. So
Yeah, no, that was
yeah,
beautiful. I
I
mean, I
wanted to
felt
pay
it.
homage to him. You
Yeah.
know, yeah.